Welcome to a new episode of the No Secret Sauce podcast. My guest on this episode is Richard. Born and raised in the UK, Richard is passionate about outdoor cycling, technology, and also the film industry. Richard has worked on movies such as Starwars, Harry Potter, Hellboy, John Wick, 300 Spartans.
This is Sparta!
And many, many more. Coming from a creative family background, Richard started young and discovered his creative side early on in his childhood years. He is a visual effects wizard and has been involved in the film industry for decades. At first, Richard wanted to join the gaming industry, but unfortunately, at the time, he got some pushback and he ended up joining the film industry instead. Richard brings out to life some interesting stories from the film industry that you just don't want to miss out on. We will also talk about AI, martial arts, and Star Wars. We will also find out about his early life and how he got himself into the film industry, and also how you can join the industry. And now, for my discussion with Richard. Other than training and talking about jiu-jitsu and the little chat that we had before this, I don't know much about you. Tell me more.
Okay, so I am from the south coast, so I grew up on the beach opposite in the Solent area, opposite the Isle of Wight, so in between Port Southampton. It was a nice part of the world to grow up, but unfortunately the UK doesn't really have warm water around its beaches. It's not like growing up...
Or sand.
Or sand. I'll come to the sand a bit later.
Okay.
But yeah, I grew up in a nice little place called Hill Head, which is mainly where I've lived, part of a bigger area called Fareham. And yeah, nice place, but yeah, I'm actually realised I like hills and lakes and forests. That's where and some people love the sea. So I'm somebody who grew up by the coast who loves it inland, and other day I met somebody who's an inlander or a midlander who wants to go and move by the sea. So sometimes you want the opposite of what he had as a child. My parents were, my father was a plumber, my mother was a language teacher.
Okay.
And I think I've mentioned my mother to you before because she's fluent in Romanian. Yeah. Which is pretty cool. She took us to Romania when we were kids. So, at a young age, I think I kind of, got to see quite a lot of your country.
That's
mainly because when we flew, it was a skiing holiday, and the flight had to land in a different location because of weather. Yeah. And then we were driven across the interior, and this was still before when it was very much the Soviet Union was still Soviet Union. Yeah. And that was quite an interesting thing to kind of see a lot of Romania. And it was, most tourists fly into the big airport and they get shuttled to the ski resorts. They never see what the day-to-day people were living like in Romania. So that really showed me how different it was to where I come from. So I think I learned a lot. I was quite a young kid. But yeah, I remember staring out the window and just being amazed at how different it was. So yeah, but it was, I had a great holiday in Romania and happy memories. So
have you ever been there since?
Not since. No, I would definitely go back. Just because I'm older now and I'd love to go. And Dracula's Castle was closed when I was a kid. Couldn't go there. So I've got to go back and see the castle.
I would really recommend it, man.
Yeah.
It's good fun. It's good fun. Especially if you like traveling, and like you said earlier, you like to go with your bikes and explore outdoors, right? There's a nice road. I don't know if you've been there before. The Transfiguration. It's like a road in between the mountains. It's very nice.
It's really the kind of road that Top Gear would have driven down.
Exactly. Yeah. There was an episode there actually, and they were saying is one of, if not the best roads to drive.
I can imagine. I think I might remember that episode. There's a few. There's one in Italy and there's definitely one in Eastern Europe. I recall them. Yeah. Yeah. We just need to get our Lamborghinis out and go there, don't we?
Yeah, exactly. Or the bikes.
Yeah.
It'd take quite a bit.
Might be a bit steep, a bit tiring, but yeah.
Yeah, it'd definitely be nice. I would definitely be up for that.
Yeah, let's all get a club trip to Romania and show us around.
That would be cool, man. That would be cool. Now, going back to your career path, I know you are an expert in visual effects.
Yeah, I've been working in the visual effects industry since, well, kind of since I graduated in 1996.
Yeah.
So, gosh, get along for, that's 27 years. If my maths is correct.
I was literally 1 year old.
Okay. So, I'll tell you about how I got to my career start point.
Yes.
So, always drawing, always painting as a kid. Art was my number one priority. Come from quite a creative family. My brother is a very good musician and write classical music and all forms of music. And our parents were amazing. They encouraged us, bought us equipment, and we never wanted for anything to pursue our interest, which was amazing to have that. So I got bought a Commodore Amiga 500 which was primarily for gaming.
Okay.
So it's like a precursor to a PC back then and this was in the late 80s. Yeah. Not many home computing was a very different to what it is now. So, our phones are about 100 times more powerful than my little computer I had at home.
Yeah.
But it came with something called a mouse.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Was it the one with the little bow in the middle?
No, that's a trackable. Those were out too, but literally when I was a kid, like the first computers didn't have a mouse. You didn't even have a monitor. You had to plug it into TV.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So
that's interesting.
And this computer was so most people have like a 2 or 3 gigahertz PC or Apple Mac or whatever. This was a 9 hertz or 9 megahertz. So it was 9 hertz. So it was basically about like 1,000 times slower than probably a modern PC now.
Yeah.
And it came with 512K of memory.
Kilobytes.
Yep. And
Did you have the floppy disks?
It had a 3.5 inch floppy disk drive.
Oh my God.
But that was an upgrade because my brother's computer was tape. You played an audio tape to load the software.
Jesus.
Yeah, and it took forever. It took like sometimes 20 minutes to load a game. And his computer had 32K of memory. And then I had 512. And then it came with a paint package, photon paint. And I was really into drawing and copying comics like 2000 AD or Spider-Man. So after a while I was like, why don't I try and start drawing on my computer because it's got a mouse. A lot of people can't draw with the mouse. I'm about the only person on planet Earth that can because I literally spent 50 hours a week.
Oh my God, yeah.
I loved it. I like doing it all day, every day. And I started getting quite good at it. And then my father's bought me a bit more kit. He bought me a memory upgrade, so I had 1 megabyte of memory, which was a lot.
Just doubled overnight.
Doubled overnight. The memory that was about the size of a sandwich. It was huge. And to look at it now, it's hilarious. Anyway, I then found a little 3D package on the front of a magazine in a shop. And I sort of started looking at it, and I was making teapots and basic shapes.
Yeah.
And then I started making. When you do 3D computer graphics, you have your 3D models, but then you do something called rendering.
Yeah.
Now, real-time games consoles, they render in real time because they have dedicated hardware. Whereas this 3D software, I rendered a 200 by 200 pixel image. I think it took it 4 days, and it was a chrome ball on a chessboard.
Oh my God.
And it's about that big. 4 days. Now, I can do that in real time in HD in like seconds. So that's how much technology's moved on. But it still got me interested in it, and I always loved airbrush. I always loved graphics, and whenever I looked at a computer art magazine, because they were around in the late 80s, early 90s, because that people were starting to do what I was doing. I just loved digital imagery. Really, really excited about it. So my interest kept going, but I then started getting interested in photography. And when I went to do my A-levels, I did A-level art, A-level photography, and that was my focus. And I realised that I could maybe start manipulating images on the computer. Now today this sounds so rudimentary because we can do most things on our phone. You know, this whole podcast you can film and edit on your phone.
Yep.
Whereas back then, you know, I went to a big college in Fareham, where I'm from. They had one computer in the art department, and there was maybe 100 students. We had 11 computers at home. Now, every classroom's got 30 computers.
Yeah.
And everybody's got computers at home. So
Phones in their pockets.
phones in their pockets. So I enjoyed all aspects of art, but for my exam pieces, or one of my exam pieces, I actually created a calendar about social and political ideologies evolving over time. And I used this software called morphing, or this technique, and it was, again, morphing was new. Yeah, I'd only been used in a few Hollywood pictures at the time, but again, I found a magazine with some photo morphing software.
Yeah.
So I basically made this sort of big kind of calendar, and it was a mixture of silkscreen printing for the background, and then I created all these morphed images of various people morphing into other people, because obviously I kind of got the idea of like a chrysalis, or, you know, when a butterfly is born, it morphs from one thing to the other. So that tied into the calendar idea, which the lecturers loved. And that actually ended up in a show in the south of England, the Hampshire Art Show, which I was really amazed at, actually. So I thought, oh, okay, this is quite promising.
So this is going somewhere.
Yeah, and I got an A for art, which I was like, okay, cool. And because I've become interested in playing with computers, I thought, right, I better go try and do a degree that involves computers and graphics. Looked around and I ended up going to a place in Bournemouth. So it's the National Centre for Computer Animation. So it's an industry awarded national centre. It's still there, still going.
And they have sand.
Sorry?
And they have sand on the beach.
Sand, so that's it.
Going back to the sand.
So when I moved to Bournemouth, even though I was staying no more than 200 metres from the sea, I didn't go to the seaside because I thought it was shingle and stones.
Yeah.
And after about 2 months, somebody said, should we go to the beach? I said, well, I'm not really interested in beach. I'm from the beach.
Yeah.
Went down there and thought, God, it's sand. So that was an opportunity for me.
Oh my God.
Walking on a shingle beach is horrible. As a kid,
It's horrible.
Almost traumatic for it a little bit. But, you know, I ended up, my course was tiny. It was 24 students. I was on the second only ever Bachelor of Arts degree course in Europe that ever happened. So the first year, which is the year before us, they were literally the guinea pigs.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was second year, and you couldn't do this course anywhere else in Europe. Now you can. But it was great. We had students from all over Europe. So we had, and they did a master's degree as well. And so I got to know lots of people from all around Europe, which was really quite nice, coming from a school where everybody was English.
Yeah.
And in the south of England at the time was not very mixed. You didn't really meet many people that were from your area. So
yeah.
So anyway, going to university was great. Met lots of people from around Europe, and yeah, really fell in love with making images on computers. Like, you know,
amazing.
I never envisaged that I would end up in the film industry. I don't think I'd thought that far. Initially, my idea was just to go and join the games industry.
Okay.
And I went and had a few interviews at games companies, but I didn't know the software that they were using. So even though I was qualified, I didn't get the job, and I wasn't really sure what to do. And then one of my good mates from university, a guy called Julian Hearn, who is actually more successful than me. I've actually recently found out he owns Huel. You know, the
Huel, the
food protein.
Oh my God, okay.
He's the guy that set that up, or one of the guys.
That's nice, yeah.
So I must give him a shout, tell him well done. I haven't spoken to him for years, but
get him on a podcast, man.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Well done, Julian. But yeah, he called me up one day and said, "Oh, I've seen this advert for a 3D artist needed at Pinewood Studios." And I thought, that seems too good a job to not go and investigate. So I went to, and I was very nervous going to a film studio, not just going to Soho where most visual effects used to be done.
Yeah.
But actually going to a film show where, you know, you've all seen hundreds of films that have been made at Pinewood Studios. And I didn't know anything about the company. The company was called Image Image Animation, and they were actually they were quite famous within the film effects kind of makeup and gore part of the industry. They were the guys who did Hellraiser. Do you remember Hellraiser? It's an old, scary movie. So, let's have a look.
If you say old, I was probably extremely, extremely young when that happened.
Actually, you weren't all when they came out.
Oh, okay. So, yeah.
So, it's a bit of a franchise, but Hellraiser was about some very nasty kind of characters. These kind of... I can't remember if they're ghosts or ghouls or just these demons that go around killing everybody.
Okay, so I need to watch it then.
You need to watch it, but there's a character called Pinhead who was very, very famous, kind of scary thing, and Image Animation were famous for creating these guys, and that company was owned by a guy called Bob Keane, who actually worked on one of the Star Wars movies, doing prosthetics. So that was my first link to Star Wars.
Yeah.
Off the back of that success, he set up his own company, and then Hellraiser, which was huge. I think it was written by Clive Barker. So those were back. If you check them out, I mean, I can't remember if they're any good movies, but they were huge in their day.
Yeah.
And they were trying to start a little 3D department. But what was amazing was I went into this company, and downstairs there was a metal workshop where they were building animatronics. They have a sculpture studio and a prosthetics casting studio. And you know, these guys could take a face cast or a body cast of you, and they could replicate you pretty damn real.
It's amazing what they can do.
Yeah.
It is incredible.
Yeah. And they were, the sculpture studio was under a very talented guy called Dave Bunnywell. He was really, really talented. And now when I joined, they showed me around, and I must admit I was a bit grossed out because they were working on the movie Event Horizon, which came out mid-90s. So again,
I've heard of that. I did heard of that.
Yeah.
Haven't watched it, but I heard of that.
Yeah.
It's probably people keep bringing it up nowadays. I don't know for what reason, but they keep bringing it up. I don't know what is the movie about.
a little bit of a classic. It's got Sam Neill, Lawrence Fishburne, a whole other bunch of famous actors in it, British and American. And it was like The Shining in space.
Oh, okay.
And it's basically sci-fi and gore, like
Okay.
gore that you wouldn't believe.
That's why probably.
Yeah. So basically, you know, this spaceship goes through a black hole.
Yeah.
It comes back, but the black hole was hell. Sorry, I'm just spoiling the movie. But the gore was being created by this company that I just joined, and I walked around the sculpture studio, and there was pictures of people with arms ripped off, guts hanging out, and the sculptors were making them for real, full size, in something called plasterling, which is like a kind of a sculptor's version of clay, and just utterly brutal and horrific. And I sort of said to them, "How long have you been doing this?" They went, "Oh, about 6 months." And I said, "How do you cope with all these images on the wall?"
You get used to it.
Well, they say you got used to it, but one of them said, I've had no libido for 6 months. Like, I can't look. Like, the idea of flesh at the end of the day is like, this is like, you know, probably going to turn vegetarian by the end of this, but they were getting like PTSD from sculpting entrails and ripped off arms and things. But it was my first little in to the film industry. I was working opposite the 007 stage.
Wow.
Which was like, wow. Yeah, wow.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, there are some various stories I could tell you about. I might tell you one. A few stories I probably can't tell you for legal reasons. But these sculptors that I was working with, or not working with, but, you know, working at the same company, they all kind of got a bit crazy doing this.
Yeah.
So to amuse themselves, they decided they wanted to put a bit of themselves into the sculpts that would be in the prosthetics that would get into the movie. So they all cast their penis and testicles, and they added them onto each sculpt. So one guy.
So they just added something of themselves to it, right?
And so I remember coming in one day, and I was like, "Oh, right, you've all done the genitals," and they all said, "Yep, they're." He said, "That one's mine," and that one's his, and that was it. Oh.
And you were there with a magnifying glass. Is that yours?
But it kept them amused. Anyway, the censor came around to kind of look at what they were doing and whether it would be allowed to go onto the stage, because once they shoot it, if it's too gory, or then the censors would maybe cut the scene or the shots, and that would be a very expensive thing. So they came around and looked at it beforehand, and the censorship guide was looking at these mutilated corpses saying, yeah, face, jaw ripped off, fine, guts hanging out, fine, arms shredded to pieces, bones snapped out, legs, that's fine, that's all fine, no penis, no penises.
That's
Like, you can't have penises in a movie.
what I wanted to say. I really believe one of the guys went a bit too extra on the penis thing. I think he added a few inches there by mistake.
Maybe, but it's a crazy thing though. Penis and testicles was deemed too horrific,
Of course.
unsavory for a movie where people are getting mutilated, and that just shows you how weird.
Obviously.
How weird is our society? So that was my first funny moment in the film industry, where just like, and ever since then, yeah, there's so many things that happened over the years. I worked at this company for a while. They were trying to develop a kids' TV show about dragons using puppets, prosthetics, and CGI. So I was there for a while, and then did a little bit of freelancing, and then I basically went to work in Soho, which used to be the hub of all post-production. So anything that was made in the UK, you name it, that involved any animation, even graphics on the news, in the 70s and 80s, before graphics on computers took over, there'd be guys in the top room of a building in Soho animating, creating like little stop frame animations with cardboard, which would then end up on Newsnight or really quick. But the funny thing is, all these guys that were working in these little animation studios, most of them, to get cheap rent, were in brothels. So a lot of the early animations, a lot of the early kind of graphics from documentaries like Panorama or things like that, they were done in brothels in central London.
So the question is now, the guys left, but the brothels remain?
No, Soho, not anymore. No, Soho is like most parts of central London. It's now sanitized.
Yep.
So in terms of I started working in Soho in 97, and I must admit, in that time, it's gone from being a sort of seedy underbelly of London, where there was sex shops, sex shows, peep shows, lap dancing, and obviously there's that, but there's also the gay community, the LGBT community. That's their home. Old Compton Street, to me, that is the centre of their world. For I don't know if it's the most famous place in Europe, but to me it's a bit of an epicenter where the gay communities kind of had their home, and that gave Soho such an interesting flavour, because you had post-production, TV, film, advertising, big money, and then you had the LGBT community, and then you also had which I didn't realise at the time, but the then dying sex and porn industry. Mm-hmm. That was centered around there, and over the years, all the sex industries just gently disappeared. Yeah, and obviously stayed as a sort of gay community hub for London, and I don't know. Obviously, Manchester's got similar thing, but
now it's sort of migrated down towards the Brighton area.
Yes, they've got Brighton and bits of Bournemouth, but it's very much, to me, it's the place where you can go and be yourself.
Yeah,
which is great, and it still is that. And the fact the sex industry is left or is leaving it's not a bad thing. The only thing I think is a shame is that it's a bit of a cult. It's a cultural thing that's going, and Soho had a feel to it in the 90s, which was it had a sort of a dark energy, a seedy energy, and it felt so different to any other place in the UK you could go. And now it's just been very sanitized. Now all the shops where you go to buy your naughty magazines and your naughty toys are selling expensive cupcakes. So weirdly,
time changes, right?
Yeah. So time changes, things evolve. But the essence of what Soho was is kind of, a lot of that's gone. So and like I say, probably for the better. But when I started there, that's where all the companies that I wanted to work for, you had to be in Soho, because all the clients, all the film clients, all the TV advertising clients, they didn't want to walk around too far, and Soho is only like 1 or 2 square miles.
So it's the same principle. I've recently read about the City of London, right?
It's
where when the bankers had to be within 10 minutes from the Bank of England.
Yeah.
And then there was all them little banks. They had their little offices, right? But in the city of London, and everyone had to leave within 10 minutes, which was crazy for me to read. And I actually think that there was so many banks and so many different directors to it, and it all had to be 10 minutes away from Bank of England. Like, wow.
Yeah.
So probably it was sort of similar vibe to it, right?
It's a similar thing. If you're a client and you're doing a movie and you've got 3 or 4 companies doing it, and you don't want to be going across London.
Yeah.
So yeah, they would sometimes they'd be literally like Wardour Street. That's that's had some of the big companies in there. So when I joined the industry, there was in and around there was companies that are still going. So Moving Picture Company, Frame Store, Cinesight, Place with the Mill. These companies have done a lot of visual effects that you would know, a lot of TV and advert things you would know from over the years. They've been around for a long time. They're like the big players. And then there's medium companies and what we call boutiques. And I'll get to boutiques in a little while.
Yeah.
So I joined a place called the Computer Film Company, or CFC, and they had actually been working on that Event Horizon movie. They did some of the very early CGI that was done in the UK on that movie.
Interesting.
So yeah, and then I sort of basically got to work with the guys that had just done the CGI I'd seen in the movie in the cinema like 6 months before, so that was really cool. And yeah, it was just a little company. Back then, probably more of a medium, but by today's standard, it would be considered sport. And yeah, I worked there kind of as a junior. The first movie I worked on officially was Tomorrow Never Dies, so I got to work on a Bond movie straight away, which was like, wow, I've hit the big time. It was only a small little thing. It was I don't know if you know that movie, but it's one of the really bad Bond movies.
I haven't watched it 100%.
So somebody fired a flare up into the air, and I had to add a smoke trail to it. So
okay, so it was a start, right? Yeah. It was a start, especially that because when you started, you didn't really have a clear path of what you want to do and how you're gonna do it and how you're gonna get there. So eventually, you sort of you bumped into things, and then you start doing your little thing, and
but also like the way we'd say, and probably referencing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because we both do it.
Yeah.
Each person has specialities.
Yeah.
So, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu being a large, complicated system to learn. Also, we know people that some people are good at dealing in certain positions that they're really comfortable, or they've got certain moves they like to do. Certain things come natural. So, with doing CGI, it's not like you can learn all of it. It's actually quite varied. So, a lot of people specialize in effects or lighting, modeling or animating. When I started, you were supposed to do everything. Which was great because I got to learn everything. But as the industry matured and the companies got bigger, then it's like factories.
Yeah.
Going from cottage industry into factories where one person specializes in doing one thing. They'll do it 5 times quicker than somebody who's doing 20 different things in a day.
Yeah.
So you get those efficiencies. But then you get pigeonholed. So I was lucky to join the industry where I got to do a bit of everything. And so I like doing effects. So fire, smoke, explosions, I like doing that. I like doing lighting. I did do animation at my degree. So animating's always, I initially wanted to be an animator.
Was your qualifications and your degrees that you've achieved during the years anything that actually helped you in the long run?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It was when I joined the industry, there wasn't much commercial software. When you were younger, there was no free software you could learn. There was no tutorials. There was no YouTube. There was no internet really.
Yeah.
I mean, I first saw the internet in 1993 when I joined Bournemouth University, and they sat down and they said, "Here's your workstation. Oh, and here's something called the internet." It's like, oh, all right, that's the internet.
Yes. Okay.
So it started in universities. I mean, it initially was a way of linking up universities for research purposes, and then obviously it became commercialized very, very quickly. But yeah, I remember using, very, very slow internet where it would take you 3 minutes to download a little JPEG.
Yeah.
And even that you were like, oh, that's amazing. And something called email. So
yeah, the big revolution.
The big revolution, and all these things we take for granted.
Yeah.
But the course I did was very well run. It was very well. We were grounded in lots of things from fine art, life drawing, film studies, media studies, computer science, programming, animation, all sorts. So it was the lecturers used to joke that the degree was 75% art and 75% computer studies. And it was. Most people who do a degree, they will do about 12 to 15 hours of lectures a week. We were doing more than double. So I was like 32 hours a week. And
Jesus.
Yeah, my friends from on other courses were like, why are you always working? In fact, I've got so much to learn.
Yeah.
But when I came out, I had a foundation that meant that if somebody was talking about a bit of programming or a bit of hardware, even though I wanted to be an animator at the time, I kind of knew what they were talking about. And so that's probably helped me more than I can realize over the years that, I kind of have a grounding in every area. But yeah, my heart was in animation for a while, but then I started seeing all the other cool tools. So, that I could make fire, I could make explosions. So, and just lighting and rendering and making cool images.
Yeah.
Really got into that. So that kind of evolved. But then when I joined this company, started working on proper movies, then I'd say the first thing was the Bond movie, and then the next thing we worked on that kind of memorable. I mean, I worked on Mission Impossible 2.
Okay.
So I
bring out another big name.
So it was about 3 or 4 of us. We did the first ever Tom Cruise face removal.
Okay.
So in the movie, he's sort of in the plane, and I think you think it's Tom Cruise, and it's not. It's the baddie, and he pulls. 1 minute you're Tom Cruise talking, he brings his hand over and he pulls it off, and then it's Dougray Scott, the Scottish actor.
Yeah.
And what we did at the time, that was quite groundbreaking. And that was steered by a guy called Dan Glass, who's one of the top Super 5 VFX guys in the industry. And I did the 3D for it, and he did the comping, and I think I did some other bits. And yeah, it was tricky, but we did it, and it became a signature for the movie. And it's like, oh wow, we did that. Yeah. So when I was early on in the industry, back then, almost anything, if it was successful and new, people would wrote about it, they talked about it. It's very difficult now because there's so much good VFX around, and people even do it at home. There's no more. I don't think there's any more boundaries to really break. I think it's almost like the space race is over. Like they can do everything now. Are you worried about the AI? Yeah. I think AI is going to come in and kind of. Are we all going to be out of a job in the future? I mean, I don't know. I mean, should we fear it? Should we not fear it? I mean, it depends what its application is. But I'm seeing.
Are you studying it at the moment and trying to sort of understand which way it's going in your industry and try and be a step ahead of it, or?
It's a weird one because it's like, in theory, AI means anybody can do anything without any skill. And I've seen some AI concept work for projects where somebody, sets up the AI system to do a concept of, I don't know, let's say, a crazed sort of unusual creatures in a forest, right?
Yeah.
And he'll set this all up and then leaves it for 24 hours. He's got 400 concepts that look good. And then you just cherry pick the ones you want, send it over.
One thing I realized with the AI, and it's well overlooked at the moment, at least for now, is the power of asking the right questions in order to get the AI to provide you with incredible results. Because you're going to get people that are not extremely great with asking the questions, with asking the AI to do the certain prompt, right? If you're not good at it, then the result is going to be equal to your knowledge of asking the questions, right?
It could be that, yeah.
So probably the way I see it at the moment is, if someone as yourself with so much experience in the industry, with so many frameworks in place, so many ideas in your head, right? If you would know, and if you would use that to ask the AI the right question, would that empower you? Would that take your skill to the next level?
It's a funny one because it's the AI, if it keeps going at this rate, it's going to kind of make most people in my industry redundant. And is that a good thing? Automation, I mean, humans always automate. Now, industry, factories, They started being very manual. Then they brought in robots. People lost their jobs.
Yeah.
Where do people go when they're no longer needed? What does that mean? So that's maybe the kind of scary bit about it is we could all be a bit replaced within 10 years if it keeps going. But this year we've started to see very big people say, like, we've got to be careful. Very, very famous people are now saying, this could be bad. Yeah. So it could become a runaway phenomenon that it could almost be like the world of sci-fi might be right all along. Yeah. Is Skynet coming?
Is it a doomsday coming?
Yeah. Is it going to take over and we're going to be humans versus machines?
It's an interesting topic these days, and it's very scary thinking, at the end of the day, you need to think, what if, right? What if it goes wrong? What if not, but what if?
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting thing, because at the same time, I look at this concept, I've literally heard it online, and it kind of got into my head. Now, what if you would use AI into a game, and that AI would create its own little players within, and then players within, they have their own little individual.
That's like Inception, the movie.
Exactly. And then you take a step back and you think, well, if we are into an AI game, do you know what I mean? That's sort of, I watch so many movies, I know.
Yeah.
But it's funny because now when AI comes in and does all these crazy stuff, and you think, would that be possible?
It is fascinating. I mean, I've got people that I work with that they do programming, and if they're in a bit of a hurry, they'll just get the AI to give them the first kind of bit of code, or they'll do some code. If it's not working, they'll get an AI bot to correct it. So that's kind of useful. That's like a helper.
Yeah.
And if we go back, let's go back in time 140 years, 150 years to the birth of photography. Back then, all the people that were drawing, sketching and painting thought that was the death of painting.
Yeah.
Hasn't happened. Hasn't happened at all. Photography is hugely important, and it allows people who wouldn't normally be able to make an image to make an image. Whereas you can't just pick up a pencil and paintbrush and create something. You can create something abstract, or you create an interpretation, but if you wanted to create a painting of you and me talking now, you'd have to have a lot of skill, a lot of time. Whereas a photograph can capture that straight away, but we've also realised that not everybody can take a good photo.
Exactly.
So, like last night, we had obviously Freddie at Jiu-Jitsu taking photos for his college course, and he'd been given a camera, and everything was set to auto, but he's learning to take photographs. So just because he had a camera that had everything automated didn't mean that he was going to automatically create photographs equivalent to a professional sports photographer. So anyway, because I've done photography before and I do it as part of my job, I sat down with him, set up the camera in manual mode, and that's not anti-AI, that's just you have more control.
Exactly.
Tweaked it, got to the point where he could then take better photos, gave us some advice on framing, what to take, composition, just some quick pointers, and hopefully he's ended up with some better pictures. But that's a human guiding you and assessing things in front of you, and that's where teachers, like, no martial art could ever be taught by AI. So I don't know.
We
you need a robot
know so far. We don't know. We don't know yet.
Unless it could be implanted into your brain, and
that's what Elon Musk is doing now with a Neuralink. You have one of them little chips on your brain. It does help people. Apparently, I'm not really educated on the subject, but apparently they have a little chip, and it starts connecting little circuits in your brain, and then people that were blinded, now they could see possibly, and people that have been suffering after stroke, now they will be better.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's funny because with these sort of billionaires like Elon Musk trying to work out, what he's doing. Certainly, he's done a lot of things to help the planet.
Yeah.
But I don't know about you. He really comes over as like a Bond villain. Like he could be like, was it half the cars in the world or like recently so many cars are Tesla, and they're all got a big computer in them. It's like, okay, so he's could control a lot of the cars in the world. He can go into space. He's building robots. He's building neural implants. Have what Bond villains do?
It is interesting. It is interesting because some people, he's actually like a dividing character himself, isn't it? Because some people do look at him like a like a real life version of Iron Man, and some people look at it like maybe a villain, isn't it? So it's a very interesting way to look at it, though.
Yeah, I've been fascinated by that, but but we've also realised he's not as smart as he thinks he is, because he's obviously turned Twitter into a complete disaster since he took over. And,
I don't know. I have mixed opinions on that. I do have a mixed opinion on that as well, because why would you believe is he turned it into worse than he was?
Well, I guess it's being a big businessman. He makes big decisions that don't have humans, the people that work, the staff, at the core of the business. He's looking at the business as a business, not, because I'm not a manager or a business owner. I am a manager, but I don't run a business or own a business. To me, it's about the people and what the people generate within the business. And I've worked at companies where they decide to change everything around, and then very hard-working people are no longer wanted, and then they bring in new people, and it changes this and settling. And obviously, the way he dealt with the staff was brutal.
Yeah.
And you think, well, I know you want to make it profitable, but if you're that wealthy, why do you have to be that brutal with people that don't have the money that you have? It is very sad to see it.
It is. Looking from that perspective, yeah, it is sad indeed. But at the same time, if you think about the fact that the company is performing now, I'm not sure about the numbers, but I think I remember it was as soon as he took over Twitter, he made redundant 85% of the company. So now the company works effectively on 15% of the whole operation before, and now is growing, just because obviously now he's got his personal brand plugged into it, and now he grows just because he added himself onto the Twitter, and now grows. It's that snowball effect. It could crash anytime. That redundancy can kick back, but at the same time, the company functions. So many people left.
Yeah, I mean, I was always wondering why Twitter needed so many people.
Exactly.
Apparently, a lot of the people that are gone are the people that look for bad things and like keeping Twitter safe. So Twitter's a more dangerous place because there's less humans involved. But don't worry, AI will keep it. And as we know, Facebook and somebody from the metaverse hasn't really been looking out for people on Facebook. But he's good at jiu-jitsu, apparently.
Yeah, apparently he's on it now.
Yeah,
he's on it. He's literally competed
won his first competition.
I need to compete. I need to go either bring him to the UK or I go to the US. So I find him. He looks like the same sort of weight as me, I think. I hope.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about famous people that do jiu-jitsu, which we've been talking about a little bit, so obviously we've got
Tom Hardy is one of my favorites.
Tom Hardy, and you know what? He went to school near where we train.
Really?
Yeah, I think he was at a private boys' school on Sandy Lane. Yeah. So apparently he was quite rebellious, I hear. So my wife tells me. Don't know how she knows the backstory. But he had a lot of respect for him, where he just very quietly went to a competition and just did his thing and did well, without any kind of ceremony. He just got on with it. And
and then he was involved in all them, I think it's Reorg. Is it called Reorg? That organization is it's like a charity club, isn't it? That they get all the money. They had that, I think 2 years ago, a rollathon, where it was 24 hours. They roll continuously.
Yeah.
It was crazy. It was interesting, and I think he's training in that gym where all that thing started.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah, that's interesting. You should look into that as well.
Yeah.
It's an interesting. Daz knows way more than I do on that subject.
Yeah.
I stopped at some point. I stopped trying to be involved too much in the jiu-jitsu world because it starts to take over. It's one of the things. He gets so much into it, and then everything is related to jiu-jitsu, and you're like,
yeah. It's interesting. I mean, and obviously recently we've seen that Russell Brand's now a purple belt, and I mean with Tom Hardy, because he does tough boy roles, you expect it, but then obviously
he's 4-stripe blue belt.
He's 4-stripe blue belt.
He's 4-stripe blue belt.
Oh, word.
Yeah, he's more striped up than I am.
Yes. Fair play to him. I mean, it's great. I mean, it's just an unexpected person to be doing it, but I mean, it doesn't matter who does it, as long as they love it. even if it is Mark Zuckerberg does it as well. But,
I think Mr. Zuck was the one that everyone was like, oh, actually, is he actually doing this? But it seems like he really seems like he loves it.
yeah, I mean, obviously, if you've got lots of money, I guess, you can afford to have your own personal trainer. You can probably get quite good a bit, but I also appreciate being somebody who's famous. You're going to be away doing projects and things. So,
I will still footblock him though.
you're signed, are you?
Yeah, I'll 100%.
So I put money on you.
Thanks for that.
The Romanian spirit will go through, yeah. But yeah, I'd actually probably more interested in seeing Russell roll. Just, I mean, he seems like he's been a fascinating guy.
Have you ever met him?
I haven't worked the amount of celebrities I've met, I've lost track of. There's so many film actors.
What is the most famous celebrity you've ever met and
So you mean in terms of just meeting somebody briefly, or chatting to somebody, or
chatting with someone?
So, I mean,
someone you keep contact with?
No, I mean, one thing you learn, or if you were to work on movies, is movies are very, they're just like a timeline that starts and ends. So you do end up kind of, if you're on a shoot, you end up getting quite friendly with some of them.
Yeah.
So I worked on a movie for about 8 weeks, and I got to know quite a lot of the actors on that, because we were working on a ship filming at sea, and the green room where they hang out was kind of about the only place we could make coffee, and they were quite chilled, and they would say hello and whatnot, and then there's a few that would be quite chatty, and I got to know some actors, but not necessarily the A-list actors. But I mean, I've met George Lucas, I've met most of the cast of the Harry Potter movies.
Okay.
So, and in terms of celebrities, Guy Ritchie, I worked on delivering visual effects for him on The Man from U.N.C.L.E. And that was quite an interesting one, because I didn't really know much about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at the time, because this was maybe about 8 years ago. And, it hadn't become as big a thing as it is now. It's now almost like the go-to martial art, like, I guess in the 70s.
Do you think so?
It seems to be. I mean, I don't hear of people taking up other martial arts at the moment.
Don't know. For me, it still feels exclusive, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I still go around and you think, and not a lot of people know it, especially when I started. It's not long ago. It's 3 years, 4 years now.
Yeah.
4 years now. It's when I used to talk to my friends about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they thought I'm doing Kung Fu. I was like, no, it's none of that. It's more of that.
Yeah.
And more of your arm being breaking, stuff like that. But people still seem that they don't know unless you compare it with UFC, isn't it? Because they say,
I guess that's raised the profile, that people have seen that the grapplers can beat the strikers. And if, the first guy who got me into training in jiu-jitsu, first thing he did was show me a load of competitions, street fights, and, various masters taking on other masters. And he went through every martial art with, like, a karate master taking on a Brazilian jiu-jitsu master. And, there's a few attempts at a strike, and then the guy gets taken to the ground and his martial art is useless, and he loses within 10 seconds.
Yeah.
I saw the Kung Fu guy, Taekwondo guys, I mean, probably even Thai boxing, once you get them onto the ground, but obviously, they're very, very, very good strikers, and they are used to manipulating the body. But, I mean, when I was a kid, it was karate and judo, or maybe Kung Fu, but obviously Kung Fu, because thanks to Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan, was huge. Karate and judo probably just appeared first. I guess that's why it's popular. And then in the mid-80s, Taekwondo appeared in the UK, and that was the first one that I did seriously. And as you know, I'm a Taekwondo instructor.
I really need to come and learn some Taekwondo. I've been back home in Eastern Europe. It's something to do with karate and judo, especially karate. Everyone that when you're a kid, you have to do karate for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's still nowadays, but when I grew up, everyone had to do karate or judo.
Yeah.
I was like, oh.
And then pretty much all there was. There wasn't much else. I mean,
boxing was, but boxing is more. It seemed more brutal, isn't it, than karate? Karate is more of a nicer martial arts.
Depends on the style, though. If you watch some of the styles, their comps are like almost as brutal as UFC.
I remember my one. It used to be called Shotokan or something like that. Shotokan.
Yeah.
This is what we used to do. I used to be beaten up by my one of my instructors. They obviously Eastern Europe, brutal.
Yeah.
If you don't do push-ups, you get smacked, and you know. And
Yeah.
it was interesting. It was interesting. It certainly created a sense of respect towards your coaches and your instructors.
Yeah.
By doing that, you know.
It's funny though, isn't it? Because every martial art, or a lot of the martial arts, are specialist martial arts, really. So, you know, I did judo as a kid for a number of years, and then stopped. But, you know, I enjoyed it, and it's only now that, you know, I've sort of been exposed to black belts that really know judo, that kind of see how effective it can be. Whereas I thought, no, what are they going to do? Throw you over your shoulder and, like, you know, you're going to punch them. I didn't realise that being, you know, thrown over the shoulder in the street would really hurt.
Yeah.
But obviously then it is limited because it doesn't quite, I don't know, I don't know it that well, but can it deal with strikes like karate? But then karate's fine if you're stood up, as is taekwondo. But I started taekwondo just because it appeared at my school, and I'd not heard of it. And I was like, well, I didn't want to do karate and judo because everybody else was doing it. I wanted to do something different. And when I started taekwondo, it was a lot more like karate because the Olympics hadn't quite taken over taekwondo. I think the Olympics kind of ruined taekwondo.
Okay.
Because they took the boxing out of it.
Yeah.
And then when the sentences appeared, now if you watch the Olympics, it's just flicking your foot. It's not fighting. It's just touching. It's like playing
Points game, right?
Yeah, it's playing it with your feet. And apologies to any taekwondo athletes out there that love it, but I like combat taekwondo, where it's traditional kind of Korean martial arts are very, very good. Like, you know, they've got many, many systems. Taekwondo is an umbrella martial art, really, for, you know, everybody does taekwondo. Like in the UK, every lad plays football, but then they might go off and do rugby, hockey, tennis, whatever. So anyway, I did that for many years. I also did Chinese kickboxing when I lived in San Francisco. That was cool. And then I did a bit of capoeira. That's just girls. Didn't girls. I kind of realised after about 2 months that the girls were all there to hang out with the instructors, but all these handsome big Brazilian guys with dreadlocks, and they were just so cool.
All these.
Yeah, I mean, it's still amazing that Brazil has produced two martial arts, because we all think that martial arts obviously are very China and Japan orientated, or Thailand and all that.
Yeah.
But then when you dig into it, France has got a martial art of its own. We're now learning that, like, UK wrestling and catch wrestling is brutally effective, as we're starting to learn, and never thought of that, you know. So in the UK, you could have learned boxing and wrestling and you'd be a pretty handy person.
Yeah.
That's my one regret, is never learning to box properly. I can punch, but I can't box. And I've never lived near a boxing gym. But I think, you know, with my background in taekwondo and learning jiu-jitsu with you and the others, boxing's like the missing bit of the triangle for me.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I didn't really hear about Brazilian jiu-jitsu until, I was sort of working on the Guy Ritchie movie. And I didn't really know what he was doing and what he was up to. So I did see him, like, every week. And he kept just disappearing or being late, or I kept hearing, oh no, he's going off and doing, like, this judo wrestling thing. He does it every day. And they're like, what is he doing? It's like, we didn't know if it was like a serious thing. And obviously he was training for his, you know, we know he's got to his black belt. And I even had a discussion with him, and there was other supervisors from another company that she did kickboxing, and she was quite a tough lady, and he really respected her because she was tough. We did have like a little powwow chat about martial arts, and he was saying, no, I'm doing jiu-jitsu, it's the best. And she was like, no, kickboxing. And he was like, and then...
As always like that, isn't it?
Yeah, and I wasn't even trying to say taekwondo was the best. I was actually saying, well, I said my Korean master does something called hapkido, and I think it would wipe the floor with all of you. And he's like, no. But anyway, we're still trying to get that seminar with Master Kim, the hapkido seminar at our club, and I'm really looking forward to you guys seeing what they get, you know. And he's nearly a grandmaster in hapkido. Like, it's staggering. It's like stand-up jiu-jitsu.
I've never been exposed to anything like that, so I'll definitely look forward to see.
Yeah, I think it's going to be quite the eye opener, because he's again, working when you find a club with a good instructor, and we're really lucky with Mark that we've got somebody who's got striking, grappling, but also he's got the good energy and knowledge, and that's what Master Kim's got. He's just such a nice person, and he's such a dedicated martial artist, and he's trained in Asia, he's competed in Asia, so he's competed in
Certified.
Yeah, he's been Pan-Asian champion in various martial arts. He's competed in judo. I don't know if it's in Japan, but he's competed in Asia, and it's quite amazing. So can't wait to kind of get him involved, show you guys what he can do. But he's also really interested to see proper Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He's not done it before, but he can grapple, but that's not his bread and butter. So I'm really excited about that. But anyway, to come back to the Guy Ritchie thing, it was kind of crazy that, I wish had I been working with him now about it, I'm sure I would have been boring him about it, or maybe he and I would have been chatting about it endlessly.
Yeah, it would be that thing in common now. Now is the spark, isn't it? It starts any conversation.
Yeah. And maybe you would have invited me for a role if I was doing it.
Or maybe you would have invited him to our club.
Yeah,
that would have been nice.
Yeah, that would have been nice. So
why keeping it just for you? You need to share with us.
That is true. That is true. So, yeah, but it's funny because when I was working with him, he was quite chunky. He was really burly, and when you see him like on other interviews, he was a lot more slender. And again, now figures like he was biffing himself up to get through his jiu-jitsu classes, I guess. It would be stronger and heavier and be able to physically dominate.
Or maybe he was just enjoying himself the way he was.
Maybe he's loving his food.
And then, same as me.
Yeah.
And then you just train and then hope that you either maintain or slowly drop down the weight. So you keeping healthy.
Yeah.
I mean, healthy activity while eating a pizza.
Yeah, well, I'm constantly trying to bulk up, and I can't even get near 70 kilos, which is still very lightweight.
How many kilos you have now?
67.
67. Oh god,
not a lot. And as you get older, you lose muscle mass, so you can. I'm kind of probably losing like a kilo every few years. So I need to really eat more and more and more. I need to work on my diet because I've got. If I was lightweight but with long limbs, I think that would be an advantage. But I think I don't know, I'm still trying to find my advantages for sparring, where being small, lightweight, and with small limbs, what's my advantage? There must be some close situations where I can dominate.
Of course, it's definitely, if you look at the same, you're not far away from how Mark is, right? Or Nick.
Yeah.
Nick is probably lighter than you are at the moment.
Nick is, and he's a very good purple belt.
Yeah,
and he is. I love sparring. I haven't seen him lately, but I feel really calm, and I feel like I can progress with him because he's so good. He's really chilled, and I think the best martial artists to train with that are senior are the ones that teach you. You're not going to win necessarily, but they let you explore what you're doing without it being a brutal kind of event where you basically are fighting for your life and waiting to tap out and go to the next person. But I think if that's it, I've learned that from teaching Taekwondo that, I mean, when I get on the mat with somebody who's like a yellow belt or even a red belt, even somebody who's not even a black belt, I get on the mat with them, they look really nervous. But I'd spar them to encourage them, and I'll break down the sparring with them. But that's what I love about an art club is when the more senior guys say to me, no, you need to do this or do that. That to me is one of the best things about each lesson is that people helping each other. And, I mean, I have to stop it because obviously I've been teaching martial arts since 1994. It's a long time. I started a Taekwondo club in 1994.
Before I was born.
Before you were born.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And I
all the good things happened just that time.
But yeah, I had 40 students. This was at Bournemouth University. Sure, I should bring in. I even had an embroidered badge made and things that I was really proud of that I designed. But yeah, I had 40 students. But I sometimes have to stop myself trying to tell people what to do in our class because I'm still a white belt.
Yeah.
but it's in my nature to say, oh, you should be doing this, we should be doing that. So
yeah, there's always in our club is very interesting because everyone can add, and that's why everyone grows at such a quick rate, right? Because everyone brings their own little bits and pieces, and everyone is encouraged to share. Where in other clubs, we definitely know there's other clubs out there, such a behavior won't be so much encouraged. Where here you can bring your moves. You know, we've got our coach Mark bringing catch wrestling into it, freestyle wrestling. We got Patchy bringing in judo into the mix,
and Way and his
Way. So it's everything is mixing up there, and everyone is accepted to do their little bit.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very interesting place, I don't think you should be afraid or thinking that just because you are a white belt you cannot share your moves, because maybe what you've realized during your role is something that would help me as well.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I'm still at that period though where I'm trying to get to the point where I'm comfortable with all the techniques, the strategy. I mean, I've seen some podcasts where black belts say don't have a game plan, but it's very easy to be a black belt and say don't have a game plan. Yeah, because you don't need a game plan. You're fluid.
It's just muscle memory.
You got the muscle memory. Whereas I was struggling for a long time. I think the first year I was there, I was not really studying it. I was only doing it once a week, and I wasn't progressing. And then obviously Mark said, "You got 2 times a week." And then I got a friend who's a 2-stripe purple belt that I used to work with, and he says, yeah, you've got to train at least twice a week. Yeah. If I was younger, I'd probably train 3 times a week, but I don't think my body could take too much. But it's amazing how it's starting to click. But I'm also studying it, so thank God for YouTube.
Yeah.
So when I started taekwondo,
more floppy disks.
Yeah. But when I started taekwondo, right, the way I learned all the basic moves outside of class was a book.
Yeah.
But striking arts it's not too difficult to teach that, because you just, what is a punch? It's 1 frame there, 1 frame there, 1 frame there.
Yeah.
What is a kick? Leg up, knee up, straight. You can convey that in the book. I've never looked at a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu book, but I imagine I don't know how they managed to convey all those things. It probably does work, but...
It does work, because a lot of things that I've noticed about myself is the fact that I feel that I go for flashy moves or one-time tricks, which it does work, but it's not really encouraged, because if you would focus more on the principles to understand the frames and whatever move you do, or how you scoop your hips out the way and then you use your legs as wedges and whatever, right? So then there's all little principles and mechanics into each role, and it's always there, right?
Yeah.
No matter what move you do, no matter what position you're in, you need to understand the way you progress and all these structures in the game. So I think it's a lot of theory into it, and it's a lot of like a mental game also. Yeah. It's not just...
I must admit, let's say last night when we were sparring, I sparred 3 people. I didn't end up tapping anyone, but I've realised that's not really what it's about as a white belt. But when you said to me recently to survive, and I think you were the only person to tap me last night, but normally I get tapped. But you only tapped me once. You normally tap me about 4 or 5 times. I think this time last year, you would be bang, bang. Probably I'm so tired, so I'm trying to cling on to get through each session.
But I'm not. For me, I have moods when if I want to, I'm fishing for some specific things. If I go into training and is a specific move that I try and go for, and if shit goes wrong, then I need to adjust, and then I'm going to allow the movement to go back again into that position, and I fish for it again. So that's basically what I do, because the more you roll with me, the more you'll realize there is one specific thing that I do for a long period of time, and then you see me stopping and not doing that and doing something else again for a long period of time.
Doing it.
Yeah.
So I've spent got some good advice from Mark about, because I said, look, I'm struggling because I'm smaller, older, I'm probably I don't know, the second oldest guy in the club. I think Daz is, I don't know if he's about, I think he's a couple of years older than me, but he's a big boy. I'm old and oldish and small.
No, I don't think, I'm going back to that, sorry to interrupt you, but I don't think, you don't struggle with your age, you don't struggle with your strength, you don't struggle with your speed. I don't think you struggle with any of that, because when I roll with you, I'm sure I am sore, but I'm sure that you are fine. A lot of it is definitely in your mind. There's a lot of you need to stop thinking about yourself that I'm old, I'm small, I'm weak, I'm light. You need to stop thinking about that and try to think of what you're actually good at, because you maybe you're not going to overpower someone like that, but you're going to outmaneuver him. You're going to move quicker than him.
That's where Mark's advice came in. And my friend Marco, who's the 2-stripe purple belt, he's my size. He might be a bit smaller. He's one of the best guys I've ever met. He's small, but he doesn't know he's small. He doesn't act small. He acts tall.
Exactly.
He's always got girlfriends that are like this much taller than him. And I'm like, does that not bother you? He's like, nah. But he's one of those guys who's so relaxed in his own skin, it's amazing.
Yeah.
But he was giving me lots of good advice, and I realised that, like, I remember Mark saying we've got to try and stop people just starting in sitting guard and just shuffling around. Like, who fights on their bum? Yeah. Right? If you're in a real fight, you wouldn't sit on your bum and wait for somebody to come to you. So we don't do enough standing techniques, and that's why actually so good with judo and it's way with the catch is that it takes out of the comfort zone, because we don't want to necessarily stand up. But I've started developing my standing game, not the throws, but knowing that there's always somebody sitting, always somebody standing. I've realised that if I can get past the legs,
the frameworks, the principles, and the mechanics.
That last year ago, I was just, Mark had taught me a bunch of submissions, but I had no idea what position I should be in, what position I shouldn't be in, when should I get out of it, when should I hold it, when should I try and distract. Not at the point where I'm fishing like you do. I'd like to. But at the moment, I'm learning to just move around the person. I've realised that, side control, knee on belly, north-south are probably where I can be effective against a bigger opponent, and that's thanks to Mark's advice. And so I've been really focusing on that, but then I've realised this week or last week that I've then completely thrown away my the game on my back. To the point where if I'm on my back now, I don't really know what to do, because I've been so focused on getting side control attacks, because that's where I want to be. So now I've decided, right, I've done 3 months of trying to pass from standing. Now I've got to start sitting on my backside, sitting guard, and try and start. I'm still not comfortable doing a triangle from guard. I need to get to the point where I can do that just like that, or even just a basic arm block. So I need to now.
It's just a journey, man. It's just a journey.
Yeah.
I know you are ahead in your game in other different martial arts, but then even with the jiu-jitsu, you need to just take your time. Just take your time. It comes slowly. Everyone has their own different things to it, right? I personally didn't want to submit people. Well, I did because of the ego. I wanted to submit people. I wanted to submit everyone. I wanted to make everyone tap. But at the same time, I slowly realized that is not the game all about. I need to survive. I need to embrace the suck. And then I need to understand there's positions I need to move through in order to get to the tap.
Yeah.
So it's so much. And then the tap is literally like you see the pyramid, right? There's so many layers to it, and the tap is right at the end.
Yeah, that makes some sense.
For us to understand that we all start at the base, but why we all strike for the top. There's a few steps that we need to go.
I must admit, I wish I'd sat down and learned sort of more about the philosophy about a year ago, because it was taking me a long time to really get it into my head. And that, it does make perfect sense. And I'm now realising that if I come away from a lesson, I no longer care if I tap people. I'd like to tap somebody who's just joined, but I don't really it's whether I can just hold my own and, like you say, survive. And I think like last night it was quite a brutal class. I mean, one person had his knee on my chest, his elbow on my chest, but that he was.
You managed to embrace the suck, right?
Yeah, and like Seb's my size. And we had good rounds last night, and he's the last few weeks he's been really dominating me by suffocating me, just getting on top of me and just closing it off. Now I know it's his thing. I was able to deal with it and escape, which I don't
amazing
escape. So
amazing.
Looking for escapes is something I really like the idea of, because unless you're the top dog in that sparring session, you need to be able to escape so then you can reset and attack or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm also starting to watch people sparring on YouTube. I remember when I first looked at even UFC when they did the grappling, I didn't even understand it. It was like spaghetti having a fight. I was like, what is going on? But now
it starts to make sense.
Like,
now you understand the language.
They're doing this and then they're doing that.
Yeah.
So that's really helped me as well. And I like watching tutorials where there's a guy that explains something and then shows him doing it in competition. So yeah, I can't remember his name, but yeah, there's one particular jiu-jitsu black belt that he makes practical kind of things. Then you see it in action. It's like like he was even talking about the way he passes the guard. He does it in a way that's different to what people find instinctive. Like even somebody said to me last night, why are you coming in standing? Or it might have been last week with Alex. And it's like, because this guy said, don't stand back and lean over because you're just going to get pulled. He's like, get in there and find your moment, pick your moment. You're standing, you can control when you grab and get it.
Yeah.
And it's like, so all these little nuggets will end up building that pyramid.
Exactly.
So
it is a lot like a language. When you learn a new language, now you understand the word. You don't understand the words, but now you learn the alphabet, right? And then now, as you move forward, and then you start understanding words, and then you're gonna start putting the words together, and then you're gonna create sequences and phrases, right?
Yeah.
So that's how it is basically. But it's just it takes time, and it's one of the sports that I really respect for the fact that it humbles you from the beginning by knowing that you need to treat it as a marathon, not as a sprint.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I was younger, I picked up some sports really, really quickly. Like in Taekwondo, I was doing flying jump back spinning kicks and doing them to a quite high standard within 3 months. That's a second dan technique.
Yeah.
Like you don't normally get to be good at that for 4 years in Taekwondo. And I was doing it in the first 12 weeks of the class. I nearly took out one of the instructors. She was a national champion. I nearly knocked her out first time I tried it. And the instructor was like, well, that's quite good. And so I was used to with Taekwondo, and it'd be the same for kickboxing or even karate, where you can practice at home on your own. I used to practice in the garden. My parents had an apple tree. I would be constantly kicking the apples off in interesting ways.
Yeah.
I love doing that. I trained with the Royal Navy. Some really tough guys that one of my first Taekwondo masters, he trained Gurkhas.
Oh, they're tough.
In Hong Kong. He's even had a street fight in Hong Kong, which in that in itself, and he won against 3 guys. So Taekwondo can be useful in the street.
Yeah.
And I said to him, what did you do? And he said, I was walking along with my friend, 3 guys behind us, and I said to my mate, something's about to happen. And he said, I got an arm on the shoulder. He said, he said, look, in a fight, knees and elbows, they're your friends.
Yeah.
Every single fighter I've ever spoken to.
And headbutts.
Headbutts, yeah, definitely. But you can't beat knees and elbows. And he says, as soon as I felt the arm on the shoulder, I did a elbow strike to the gut. I then went up to the face, and then that person fell down, and then I looked over my shoulder, and another person was coming at me. He was a reasonably large guy, not too large, but a good solid guy. And he said I back kicked him, and he went down, and then I think they ran after that, but that would have been over in seconds. And that's where a striking martial art is really good, because in jiu-jitsu you probably take a little bit longer to take them out, and you don't want to be on the floor in a fight in case there's more than one person. So that's probably where striking arts are really effective. But to come back to his experiences of teaching Gurkhas, one of his students, so I don't know if you know about the tradition in the Gurkha village that once a year they have to behead a cow.
Okay.
So one of his students, one of his students was basically given that honor, and it's kind of an honor, but it's also, there's a slight problem with this honor. You must cut through the cow's head and neck in one go with the sword, and if you don't, you bring dishonor on the village. Ooh. And the only way to get rid of that honor is to kill yourself. So he said his student was...
Not a lot of pressure, so no pressure on you guys.
This guy's going to be like a Gurkha. He's going to be, the Gurkhas are deemed to be pretty much the toughest soldiers in the world. Their reputation is incredible.
Yeah.
They did go to the Falklands War. The Argentinians, when they heard they were coming, they just ran away because they literally thought that they were going to get their great big Gurkha knives and just disembowel them, and they were that scared. So these guys are some of the best soldiers.
Is it true that they are banned from Afghanistan?
From what? Sorry, from
Afghanistan.
Oh, I don't know. Just don't know about that. Oh,
they were too brutal for the war.
Maybe.
No, I heard.
Well, I have to ask Daz about that.
Yeah, definitely.
He would know more, and I'm sure Daz has got obviously a lot of military stories and then some. But but just the way my sort of Navy instructor just is described, waiting for his student to come back from the ceremony. Or will he be alive? Will he do it successfully? Will he come back, or will he have to kill himself? I mean, that's one of the craziest things I've ever heard. He did it. He was fine. So, but still, what a thing to, you wouldn't sleep that night, would you?
It's not like there's a lot of pressure on you, isn't it? It's just like...
What makes going for a sparring session seem like nothing by comparison?
Yeah, it's just walking apart with the dog.
Yeah. But, more actually, now I'm thinking about it in terms of people that have influenced me that I through martial arts. So, yeah, I trained. It wasn't a Royal Navy club, but all the people that ran it were in the Royal Navy. So, the physical fitness levels in that club were off the scale. I mean, we'd do circuit training before sparring. Thank God I was young enough to be able to take that. But the circuit training was so tough that on 2 occasions I actually fainted. Then they had to catch me at one time because they were pushing and pushing and pushing, but that's the mindset of the military. And so good fitness from that. Really good to get to know some people in the armed services, and then obviously great. I love chatting to Daz about some of his background, and then Master Kim, who teaches me Taekwondo Hapkido. He is Korean Special Forces, Green Beret. And obviously we've got New Malden up the road.
You need to get Master Kim on a podcast, man. You've got way too many people I need to get on a podcast.
Yeah,
I need to have a list of you and then try and hook us up, man.
He would love that. He has got a lot of good stories.
100%.
And
let's make it happen.
Yeah, let's make it happen. And you know what? There's three very amazing Korean instructors or masters in New Malden, or centered around New Malden, which is Koreatown. So we've got Master Kim, who covers the Taekwondo, and he's always going up and doing lessons at the Korean. He's doing Korean cultural events. He's like the main Taekwondo guy in the UK. Like the Korean embassy calls him up, and he goes off and does lessons at the embassy, the VIPs, things like that. And then there's Hapkido, which is the thing I've obviously wanted us to try and fold into our jiu-jitsu. And there's a few different masters that do that, but then there's this other thing called Taekwondo Muso, which I think you would love because it's a combination of boxing, judo, jiu-jitsu, taekwondo. It's like a Korean Special Forces MMA.
Interesting.
And the reason that they have this, it's a very new martial art, but what happens, and again, Master Kim can, if you do the podcast, can
definitely detail, but that's up, man.
But what happened was you have North and South Korea, and every now and again they have fights on the border.
Yeah.
Unarmed combat. And all the South Koreans were really good at their taekwondo. And obviously the North Koreans do their style of taekwondo, but one year 20 soldiers crossed over from North Korea and beat the shit out of all the South Korean soldiers in unarmed combat. And the Korean military reassessed itself, and it literally invented a martial art to deal with every eventuality. So that's why Taekwondo Muso it's got all the kicks of Taekwondo, it's got Hapkido in it, it's got Krav Maga, it's got Sambo and wrestling, Jiu-Jitsu. I mean, I'm not sure which one, but it's definitely got judo, it's got boxing, it's got, you name it, it's pretty much everything. And yeah, you start your fight almost like a Taekwondo competition where you're there, but you're wearing wearing guard gloves that you can punch and grapple in, but you're wearing full face. So you can go in there and you can do boxing, you can do taekwondo kicking, but once you get close, you can go to the ground and go for arm bars and leg locks, and you can just do anything. And there's a Japanese martial art I've recently discovered. I think it's called Kudo or Kuda, something like that, which is exactly the same, but like almost like street brawling. Take karate, add judo, and add jiu-jitsu, and make it as violent as possible.
The only one martial art I've been exposed to recently because of Mark. Mark took me to one of the seminars in up north. I don't remember the name of the moment. Near Peterborough, anyway, around that area there. Left way. I'm gonna get a little hate for this, but is essentially is like a Muay Thai, but with headbutts and face scratches and elbows to the spine, and it's like, wow. So that is, but it's amazing.
That sounds mental.
It is. When he shows like elbows to the spine, you're like, how do you train that?
Well, we train it at the Taekwondo club. So, I mean, that sounds amazing, and that's kind of what martial arts really should be, is just, there should be a rough and tumble element. Yeah. And that's where, for example, Taekwondo is a really good martial art to get you into martial arts, or very good for your kids, very good for anybody who wants to be fit and learn to protect themselves a little bit, but not have to do something that's too brutal.
Yeah.
But it does have self-defense, and self-defense is Hapkido-based. And we do self-defense combinations. So you basically, you're doing a block, you're doing a kick, or you might be doing a kick, you might be doing a strike, you give a knee, but most of Master Kim's combinations, he loves to end where no matter what you're doing, you get the head, smash the face to the knee, and when they're down, you do 2 elbow strikes to the spine. And
man, you give me goosebumps.
I know.
When I first see the elbow to the spine, anything really, it's just a bit extra. It's a bit extra for me.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd want 2 strikes to the elbow from Master Kim, or whether, because I've seen how good he would be at snapping elbows and wrists. I mean, he's taught me how to snap. I know how to snap somebody's arm the wrong way with that just by using my shoulder. You know, I showed it to Mark actually the other day. You catch a punch, you throw it to your waist. Their arms are out like that. All you do is get your body and you push it through with all your weight. Eventually, that's the bit that's going to go. It's like a stand-up armbar.
Yeah, essentially, isn't it?
Yeah, but because you're standing up, if that doesn't work, then he's got another thing where you pick you put one finger in here, you grab the wrist, you twist it round, break the wrist, you then get on the floor, and then you start attacking the head and the spine again.
The spine, man. The spine gets me all the time, man. The spine gets me all the time.
Wow. It's quite an important bit of your body, really. So, yeah. I mean, I do sometimes get a bit worried about all the neck abuse that we have to go through sometimes. I don't know if you ever had it, but you're thinking,
it is one of the...
Got a bit of a fractured vertebrae, but yeah, I'll leave it for a few days.
It is one of the things that is funny to look at it that way, is we do a sport knowing that we're gonna grow by looking sideways, by turning your whole body, not just the head. You get older to do this, but we still do it. And then manky ears and fingers.
I haven't yet got the ear problem, which, I mean,
my ones just keep flattening out, and then one seems to be a bit flat.
I don't know if I'll get away with it. My father was a sort of, I don't know, semi-pro, but he played rugby to a high level in the 60s, and he played rugby. He learnt rugby and played rugby at rugby on the original pitch where rugby was invented.
Yeah,
this is, a very old pitch. It's so old, it's got a tree growing on the side of it, and they've got special rules for when the ball goes into the tree. So, but it's the birthplace of the greatest sports in the world, and he doesn't have cauliflower ear, despite being training rugby up until quite a late age. And actually, all my cousins, one of them played for England. They've actually got all right ears as well. Maybe they just covered them up.
I think so, yeah.
But yeah, it's quite interesting that all these martial arts give you bad ears if you're not careful.
It is what it is. Some people wear them proudly. Some people run away from them. I'm somewhere there in the middle. I don't know what to think about them, but at the same time, I don't chase it. I don't go and try and rub ears against things.
I could never quite work out why. I've never come away with bad ears, but not say it won't happen. I can tell you one martial art I didn't do very well in, but it's not a real martial art.
Okay.
The martial art or the Way of the Jedi.
The Way of the Jedi.
So, as I told you sort of previously and at the start of the podcast, I worked on Star Wars. And I went to California to do that. So, and the way it happened was I'd been working in London for 3 years, kind of got to the point where I was kind of like a mid-level artist, which was great. And then my former university lecturer he'd been headhunted by Industrial Light and Magic, which is George Lucas's visual effects and special effects company. And he'd gone over there, he was managing a lot of 3D artists, and he basically needed to crew up for episode 2, the second Star Wars movie, the prequel. So he went over, came back to the UK and just basically got all of his old students, because he had taught us in his own image. So basically, before I knew it, I was out in San Francisco, about to work at Star Wars, with all my mates from uni with me.
Okay.
It was like, wow, this was amazing. Worked on The Mummy Returns first. I was supposed to be working on Jurassic Park 3, which I think I would have preferred because that was a better movie, but hey-ho. And then Star Wars happened, and what they would do is every week they would send out an email saying, who wants to be an extra? So you wouldn't be with all the actors and the director. You would be on a blue screen or a green screen stage, walking around or wearing some alien outfit or whatever. And I did get around to doing it, but then there was a thing going out saying, oh, who would like to be a Jedi in a battle scene? It's like, yeah. I mean, even people that weren't into Star Wars, that work on Star Wars, wanted to do that.
Yeah.
And I went to the audition, and we use a Russell Brand term that my wife taught me, which is, to my shame, I didn't qualify to be a Jedi despite being a black belt in martial arts. I was so gutted. I was embarrassed. Basically, Taekwondo, I'd never been taught weapons. Now I'm training with the Koreans. I've learned Gumdo, which is their stick fighting, which is like Kendo, because Master Kim's a 4th dan in Kendo, which is quite handy. But does Gumdo, as they call it. He taught me nunchucks, all sorts of things. But when I went there, and bow staff, but when I went there, all I had was kicks and hand techniques. So they said, right, here you go, here's the lightsaber, off you go.
So you're not a Jedi.
No, and I was like, so I was just trying to do some generic things and then link them up with fancy kicks, hoping that all they needed me to do was spin my lightsaber and do a jump spinning, do a tornado kick, and that would be enough for them. Anyway, it didn't quite make it, but there was a guy next to me who was also English. He did fencing, and he got in, and I was like,
God, yeah.
So okay, he was quite smug about that. And then a few other people got that qualified to be Jedis, and I'm pretty sure none of them knew how to do what they were doing.
How funny that sounds. Get qualified to be a Jedi.
I know, but it's not.
I thought you were born to be a Jedi. You don't get qualified.
Yeah, well, not qualified. However, it's not. The story ends reasonably well because I ended up getting the role, which was only a stand-up role with no dialogue, but I got to get the role of a senator because obviously they got the Senate. So I am in episode 2. I am senator of the planet Ishitib. So if there's any Star Wars fans out there, have a look at Ishitib. And it's basically, I was a sort of bipedal parrot with eyes out on sort of out here. So like cross between a lizard, a human, and a
You
parrot.
need to send me a picture of that. You definitely need to send me a picture of that.
You can even buy a toy. You can buy an Ishitibian toy. You can't get the senator, which is a shame because if they'd done a senator, I would have been made up forever because I grew up I always wanted Star Wars toys as a kid.
Yeah.
Didn't really get very many. My parents didn't really buy me any of them, but my cousins had all of them. And then if you told me as a kid that you'd be able to get a Star Wars, not only would you be in Star Wars, but you'd be able to get a toy of you in Star Wars, I would have
Oh my
wet my pants. But I'm the end scene or sequence at the end of episode 2 Attack of the Clones, which is a terrible title, and I can tell you about that in detail in a minute, another anecdote. But I'm stood behind the evil Senator Palpatine, who obviously goes on to become the Emperor. I'm stood behind him at the end of the movie, just looking at all the clone troopers going into the spaceships, which is pretty crazy. Crazy indeed. So I'm a failed Jedi. I flunked Jedi school, but I am a senator.
I'm gonna be extremely real honest with you. I think there's, at least now I think it's 3 types of people out there in the world. Is either Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, or none.
Well, there's Trekkies, but they might be, I don't know if they're a dying breed, because
They're probably dead, yeah. I never heard of them.
but
So I was never, I think I watched the first Star Wars movie, and that was it. But I was Lord of the Rings all in, 100% all in.
yeah, I mean, Lord of the Rings it's amazing. I mean, Lord of the Rings was written before George Lucas wrote Star Wars. I mean, Star Wars obviously feeds off samurai mythology and things, and so, yeah, I mean, George Lucas was very smart when he pulled that story together, and obviously it's born almost like an industry within the industry. But I did get to meet him, but he wasn't very happy with me or my friends. Let me tell you about that particular misdemeanor. So you were saying, who have you met that's famous? Well, I have met George, but I was dressed as a clown at the time. So the backstory
Was he scared of clowns?
No, he was very grumpy. He was not in a good mood because we were being annoying. I get it, and he was being very gracious, to be fair to him. But what happened was when they announced, we worked on episode 2, and that's all we knew was caught up until the last, say, 3 or 4 months before the movie was finished. And then they announced the name of the movie. And at Industrial Light and Magic, they had a tannoy or a paging system that anybody could use. It was a very big company over many, many buildings, all fake. Like if you went to Industrial Light and Magic in Marin County, where it used to be, you would think you're in just a generic business park.
Yeah.
Because every building had a fake business name. Because obviously fans, they had to keep it quite secret. But there was there was a little reception. If you went in there, and you went there, you got past reception, then there was Darth Vader right in front of you, the Darth Vader outfit. You know, it's quite mind-numbing. You look around, and there's like AT-ATs on shelves, and then there's the Millennium Falcon hanging above you, and it's not a toy, it's the Millennium Falcon. So pretty crazy. And you could go to Skywalker Ranch and see the original lightsabers and Indiana Jones' whip and his hat, things like that. And you're like, oh my god, because George Lucas produced as well as everything else. Anyway, when they announced the name of the movie as Attack of the Clones, everybody at work were just groaning, going, "Oh God, is that the name? Oh no, that's a terrible name. Oh no, what are we doing? That, you know, we liked episode 2 was fine, but anyway, there was one guy abused the paging system that day. He kept on putting on Shirley Bassey's song. Have you heard of Shirley Bassey? She sung a lot of the Bond theme tunes, like Goldfinger. She sang Goldfinger. Amazing. She's like one of our best singers from the UK. She had a song called Bring On the Clowns. It's a very sad song. So this guy, somebody was playing all day, Bring On the Clowns, isn't it sad? And then we put the phone down, and then he would keep doing that every hour because it's like a dirty protest.
Yeah.
But it gave me an idea for the company Halloween party, right? Get this, at ILM, as we know it, as a Fly Magic, back then, they had the most amazing Halloween party with the most amazing prize. The prize for winning the Halloween party costume was a week for 2 in Hawaii. So competition was rife.
Yeah.
But we heard that that there was a married couple in the model workshop. So they build models for a living. They'd been evolving their costume every year, and they just keep winning, and they keep improving it every year. Nobody keep up with them. And they had a working fairground with mini George Lucases on it, like you know, carousel, and the wife was a moving carousel, George Lucas on going around it, and then he was a ticket office with lights and music, and they would always win. But we heard you could do a group costume just for fun.
Yeah.
So I came with this idea of doing a clone clown army. And we got about, 12 or 16? I got more, but a lot of people pulled out because they thought they might get told off.
Yeah.
So why do you get told off? It's a party, it's Halloween, who's going to come up to you and tell you off for being a clown? Nobody. Anyway, a few people dropped out, but we got about 14 of us. And we basically, each person had to go off and one person had to get we got big red clown shoes, we got white overalls with black tops, big black curly wigs, obviously the big nose, and we did the makeup to look a bit like a clone trooper. And we had little matching ray guns. And we got to the, just outside they did it in a soundstage, because it's the biggest building they had. And we decided to march in like the clone army.
Yeah.
It's one of the most amazing moments of my life. We basically, this was a huge Halloween party, right? With people dressed as aliens, superheroes, you name it. You know that thing, that cliche that if you go into a bar and the music stops because you're not welcome or people like look at you.
Yeah.
This happened because what we didn't realise was 14 matching clowns with guns is actually really intimidating. So we marched in and literally everybody just stopped and froze because it was just like, what the hell? There's a giant army of clowns coming. And a lot of people have clown phobias.
Yeah. I never understood that, but anyways.
Yeah. So anyway, we didn't intend to say anything to George Lucas. We didn't know if he was going to be there, but he was walking around with his daughter to say hi to people. He didn't kind of swing by us until near the end of the evening. And by then, everyone had too much beer and wine. So what he found at the end of the evening was not just a clown army, he found a drunk clown army. And one of the guys who was had too many cocktails was shouting, "It's Attack of the Clones! No, it's Attack of the Clowns!" And he was making the joke, and George Lucas turned around and said, "Ha ha, very funny. You might be the first, you might be the last." It just looked really not happy. But to be fair to him, he posed for a photo. I'll show you the photo at some point of George Lucas stood there, not very happy, with a load of drunken clowns around him. But he was
Attack of the Clowns.
And that was the Attack of the Clowns. But to be fair to him, he was pretty gracious. But very nice of him to go to a party where every other person is a Star Wars freak, and walk around and things. And end of the day, he's a regular guy. He just lives in Marin County and just happens to be world famous. But it was nice of him to do that. But yeah, I do feel a bit of regret for being a bit too cheeky that night. But
it is what it is. I think before we wrap it up, I've got one more question for you.
Yeah.
I'm trying to ask everyone at the end of it, if someone would try and get into your industry, someone's out there just graduating the college now.
Yeah.
What would be your advice for them?
Okay, so getting into my industry it's not too difficult. It's no more difficult than getting into a lot of professional industries. It's just about how much time it takes and how much money it takes. So you can learn at home. I mean, one of my fellow Taekwondo instructors who lives in Walton, Sam, that I train with and teach with, he does 3D, he's self-taught. He gets little commissions and does things like that. He knows quite a lot. But you can basically, if you wanted to get into this industry as cheaply as possible, you download free versions of some software called Blender, and it's shareware. It's really good. And you go on YouTube and you just start learning the basics. You start with modeling,
amazing,
texturing, animating effects. You can learn all the different modules. And thanks to YouTube and shareware software, you could get quite far. You could go and do a college course. There's college courses all around the UK that offer media, visual effects. My son, Finn, who used to train with us, he's going off to do his A-level was in Woking, and he's doing 3D design. So he's going to be doing 3D modeling.
Me.
And but you could go off and go and do a 3-month course and get into the industry that way. You can go and do a degree like I did, but degrees cost a lot of money now. So you don't need a degree to get into my industry. It might take you a few years to learn the skills and create what we call a show reel.
Yeah.
So you create little animations, you put it all together, or you film some footage. Like, let's say you wanted to put some CGI into this. You would model some of these things, but let's say maybe this is CGI and it's that you add it to the scene. So yeah, it's not difficult to start doing it. You just need a laptop with a decent graphics card or just an okay PC, and you can get started. So it's really accessible now. So and
you just have to go and do it.
Yeah, and there's lots of jobs around, and you can get into the games industry as well with those skill sets. So if I wanted to go and work in games in Guildford, near where we are, is the
EA,
Electronic Arts are there, Epic Games are there, you name it. So London is for film and TV. So we're lucky. We live in the middle of two of the biggest epicenters in Europe for doing 3D CGI or games. And like I say, I could be working 1 year in games, I could then do another year in visual effects. I could do, and I've got friends who've done both. I've not yet done both, but I might.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you, Charlie.
I appreciate speaking to you.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Definitely, we need to make this one episode 2 soon.
Okay. There's more anecdotes. There's more stories. More things. There's more disasters in movie making. There's more things I've said and done that I shouldn't have done.
We need to speak about some of that.
Yeah. We'll do round 2 at some point.
Thank you, Richard. It was a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.